And we are here at EarthX 2025 at the EarthX TV stage, and I got an incredible guest with me. This is Mr. Simon Mainwaring. Give him a round of applause. Now, Simon, let me tell you something. See, I'm a social media guy.
Sure.
You know, I'm a millennial. I came of age with this. This is what I know. Built a pretty decent following. That's why they kind of brought me here. But you, sir, you've taken it to a new level. Right. And from what I read in your fabulous bio, you are using brands and social media to drive the necessary critical mass to create change. Tell me about your company and what you guys do.
Thanks, Theo. So I'm Simon Mainwaring. I'm the CEO and founder of a brand consultancy called We First. And we build multi-stakeholder movements for global enterprises all the way through to exciting, dynamic, disruptive startups. And what that means is, you know, movement can be seen as a word that people throw around a lot, like a very passive noun. But it's actually very meaningful when it's an active verb, like you are creating movement. And what it means is, how do you architect strategy and storytelling to get suppliers, employees, retailers, customers, consumers, all being force multipliers for your impact and business growth.
Wow.
And so we build those movements strategically and do the storytelling for those companies to take everybody with you.
Now that's incredible. So I did get his name wrong. It's Simon Mainwaring. That is a wonderful name, by the way. Now, sir, I don't know if you've picked up on this, but there are some critiques about the effects of social media on our population. And yet, when I look at your books and what you've written, it is highly optimistic.
Right.
So what makes you feel like we need to refocus our energy in grounded hope for the optimistic and positive use for social media?
You know, it's really interesting. If you look at the historical timeline, the first book I wrote, We First, was in 2011.
Right.
Facebook was there was no Twitter, there was no Pinterest, there was no all these other platforms. And there was real promise in this idea of creating a bridge between citizens and institutions and brands and consumers. But to your point, if we're honest, the almighty dollar won the day through the advertising lens.
Right.
You know, social media became algorithmically driven. We became the product. We are the data sets on which they then inform how we experience the world.
Right.
But at the same time, what it's allowed us to do is to re-bridge those connections that were breaking down. Our connection to each other and the planet we share. And if we mobilize people the right way, we can actually leverage this technology to teach each other to be human again.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, either side of the political aisle, no matter what industry or category you're in, everybody wants a better future for their kids.
Sure.
Everybody wants a healthy planet we can share. Social media can be a place where you can facilitate healthy dialogues. That said, I'd be a fool not to say that there's these information ecosystems out there that are creating very different experiences of the same reality. And if I was to sort of throw in a secret ingredient to bring us back to that center that allows us to move forward together, I actually think it's time in nature. Because I think we've almost outsourced ourselves. We've decolonized ourselves through all of these avatars of ourselves across social media. There's probably 10 versions of you, Theo, out there across different platforms.
Maybe more. Yeah.
What if we instead went back out into the natural world and we had those experiences of awe, where we almost right-size our position in the world and we become struck by, whether it's mountains, whether it's oceans, whether it's sunset, that we are not at the top of the food chain, but rather we're part of living systems. I think when we actually right-size our position in the world and reconnect to nature, then we can have a powerful 1-2 combination. And the thing that really concerns me the most, but is also the greatest opportunity, is that there's an epidemic of absenteeism in the natural world right now.
Wow.
Even all of us in the sustainability and climate space, how much time are we spending in the natural world?
There.
We look at our screensaver on our computer and say, there we go, there's the natural world. If we are not investing time in the natural world, how do we expect the next generation to have a love affair with the natural world? And so the great challenge, but also opportunity through these tools like social media and even AI, is to leverage this connective tissue to reweave the social fabric between each other and the planet we share.
Right, so I've got a good idea of the what, but I want to hear about the how.
Sure.
Like, how do you get us out of these comfy seats with these wonderful, plush, bright TV screens, computer screens, beaming blue light into our eyes, and mobilize us to get back into the natural world. You got some examples of that?
Yeah, I think, specific to the work that we do, there's an opportunity for brands to really lead the way.
Right.
And the brands have to drive these movements that I mentioned. How do they do that? Well, if I'm honest, after 15 years of this work at large corporate level down to startup level, there's a few big mistakes that I see every day that if you address, you can really get people to get mobilized in compounding ways. And the first is, stop talking about yourself. If you are a company, a startup, a brand, a non-profit, stop communicating in a self-directed way. Because like anything else, when someone's talking about themselves, you tune out.
Yeah, right.
Instead, you've got to be the celebrant rather than celebrity of your stakeholder community.
Wow.
So if I'm talking to my suppliers, if I'm talking to my employees, if I'm talking to consumers, position your brand as a platform on which those stakeholders stand. And use your content and social media to celebrate what they're doing upstream in their supply chain, how your employees are volunteering and participating, how consumers are making conscious choices that do less bad and more good. If you want to use these tools effectively, make it about them and not about you. And then the final piece that I see, the big gap, is that most of the organizations, for-profit or non-profit, when they have a big initiative, they fail to tell the last mile of the story supply chain.
Wow.
And what I mean by that is you put all this effort in, you rally all these people, you create all this impact, you fall over, have a glass of wine, sleep and cry and say, thank God it's over. And you fail to go back to those suppliers, those employees, those consumers and say, look at what we did, not what we did, but look at what you did and what we did together. And when you do it that way, you not only keep them engaged, but you can sustain their engagement because you've closed that story loop. And most organizations of any type fail to do that.
So let me have an example of the organizations who succeed in doing that. Like, who stands out to you, not favoring one or the other, but just something that's more top of mind for you, of a brand that really puts in the work with the model that you're talking about?
There are so many brands to call out, and there's certain favorites and darlings that come and go. What's really interesting right now is watching some of those self-stated or self-selected progressive brands retreat, and then they're getting punished in the marketplace because they said they're one thing and doing another.
Wow.
But what's interesting, and I'll talk in broad terms, you've seen the food category. A decade ago, people weren't screaming about the good that they're doing in the world. And now you walk down the shopping aisle and everything's about better for you, better for the planet.
Right.
The apparel category, every single outdoor adventure brand and now even, intimates and everyday wear brands are talking about their responsibility to the planet and the supply chain. You look at the energy sector and this energy mix, including, solar and nuclear and so on. And now you're seeing more and more brands responding because they've got regulatory pressure, especially in Europe if they're a global company.
Right.
But now you've got that domestically here as well. You've got competitive pressure because other people are doing it, so you're going to get left behind. And you've got stakeholder pressure because you've got employee activism, you've got consumer activism. So if you're not doing something, if you're not showing up authentically, they'll call you out. So to answer your question specifically, any brand that is absorbing the time and resources costs to re-engineer what they're making upstream, treating their people more responsibly internally, and then taking those responsible products to market in a collaborative way, they're the ones that are going to lead the future.
I like that. Give them a round of applause for that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So I'm guessing that, when you talk about the work that you've been doing, you've got a lot of track and experience at actually walking this out. And I'm trying to figure out, what are perhaps some programs that you're implementing right now that maybe we can join and be a part of?
Well, I think what you're seeing, which is both encouraging and a cause for concern, is that consumers in the US are voting with their dollars more so than ever before.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to ask, for those who are watching, how many of us are now consciously choosing what we're buying based on what you know about that company or the impact you want to have personally? And so to speak about any program that is really going to be meaningful is not talking about activating you in service of what a brand's doing. It's about saying, how can you activate the agency for change in the consumer? Because an employee wants to know that they're working for someone who's part of the solution rather than part of the problem. A consumer wants to know, especially if you've got kids, By buying this product, am I doing something that's really going to be positive for our future? So there are programs across plastics coalitions, there are programs across regenerative ag, there are programs across circularity, there are programs where you're seeing a lot of pre-competitive collaboration where companies are coming together and saying, as an industry, we've got to de-risk our future by doing things differently, so we're all going to agree to get more plastic out of our supply chain, or we're all going to agree to maybe rent out second-hand items, or we're all going to agree to be more accountable with some of these sustainability metrics that are out there. So there are thousands of programs. We've seen so many wonderful programs here at the conference, but the common denominator really is about taking responsibility and ownership for the impact you want to have, seeing the various stakeholders, employees, retailers, consumers, as co-creators, and really recognizing that we are out of time. These challenges we face are not sitting out there statically in the future waiting for us to arrive. They are compounding as we speak, hurtling back towards us in the present. And so what you're going to see from a programmatic point of view in the next couple of years is not companies in a linear way incrementally inching their way forward doing a little bit better. Those expectations are coming towards us in the present, and there's going to be this hockey stick of expectation. Your social license to operate will be removed if you are doing so much harm that even your employees don't want to work for you, let alone consumers don't want to buy from you. So the programs play in all of that arena.
I got you. So so when we talk about these kind of programs and engaging in social media, a lot of people are becoming hyper aware of their data.
Right.
How it's being used, how it's being mined, and how it's like the new oil. And what I'm trying to figure out is, like, does your company have any standards for the ethical use of data from these brands that you're partnering with to make sure that it is used in a wise way that leads to productive outcomes?
You know, you need data outright to justify measurable impact. But even more so today, because in this economic climate, in this cultural landscape, as we all know, we've almost shifted from talking about reputation to talking about de-risking.
Right.
We've shifted from virtue signaling to talking about value creation.
Okay.
Because a lot of companies have pulled their heads in. You know, there's a lot of economic headwinds, there's downward pressures on stock prices, there's a lot of competitive pressure, there's regulatory pressure.
I noticed,
Yeah, so what you're seeing is companies lean into the data to make the business case to their CFO.
Okay.
Otherwise, they don't even have permission to have a program. It's going to be withdrawn, it's going to be seen as discretionary. That said, the types of data we capture is, for example, tangible measures like increase in stock price or market share or sales, increase in reputation, so reputation enhancement, like your share of voice in an industry around a given conversation. Cultural metrics, for example, how well do your employees understand what your company stands for, why they work there, and how well equipped do they feel to actually tell that story and to be an advocate for that change. And then obviously sales at point of sale, and also the loyalty and retention you have with your customers, your retailers because of that. Because B2B is now B2C. Your customer needs to know that you're not a liability if you're a B2B company, you're an asset. So even a B2B company has to tell a good story and back it up with data.
So what I'm hearing you say is you're using the mass people power that we as consumers have to make sure that you redirect where essentially we vote with our dollars to vote for something that we want accomplished in the world. Am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely. We can all buy the world we want. And this isn't a political or partisan issue. One of the things, the big mistakes I think that we've all had in this industry over the years is a lot of us in the sustainability and climate space, we got out over our skis. We got wonkish, there were too many acronyms, we left people behind.
Okay.
And we need to reach back and take people with us. What does that look like? Instead of saying, hey, let's protect biodiversity, let's say, let's protect plants, animals, and where they live.
Right.
That's something everyone can rally around. In the same way, when you're talking about being more sustainable or climate responsible, that leads to waste management and efficiency and all of these business metrics, which are very, very defensible because it's simply good business. So it's about rallying people and allowing them to be force multipliers, but not in the service of people and planet in a kind of do-good kind of way, but with real business rigor to it. and finding common ground through new language that everyone can agree on. I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I want to decimate the planet we all inhabit. I want to compromise my children's future, and I want to poison myself with everything I put in my body.
Right.
I don't think anybody wants to do that.
Correct. And so what I want to talk about, because briefly we're running out of time, but I can't have you get out of here without pubbing your book, man, because I actually want to get myself a copy. Tell us about your book and what prompted you to write it.
You know, I was an ad guy for a long time, and I'd worked on brands like Nike, and I'd run Motorola globally and launched the Razr phone, and I came away from these experiences with a direct experience in building movements. You put some communications out there, and millions of people around the world do something different, and that's real power in that. We all know from politics the power of simple storytelling. And I wrote these books because I thought, having had that experience, what if we took the power of narrative across to companies doing good? And so the first book was called We First, How Brands and Consumers Use Social Media to Build a Better World.
We First.
And the second book is called Lead with We, The Business Revolution That Will Save Our Future. And they were both bestsellers, gratefully, I think, because people were looking for ways to leverage business and storytelling to get greater speed and scale of response, because we are out of time. I have 2 daughters. We are out of time for their future. In which case, how do you take people with you? How do you not preach to them at a head level, but connect with them at a heart level, so that as human beings sharing one home, we want to show up?
Man, listen, this actually proves that there are people in the business world who really give a darn about moving the needle forward for all of us. It's not just about the bottom line, when everything actually affects the people that those businesses are serving. And I just want to thank you, sir, for your contributions, because there's a lot of good going on. And we wouldn't know much about it if it weren't for this beautiful conference, EarthX 2025, man. Talk to this man about his book and see what we can do to actually get that in hand, because I think I got some reading to do, thanks to Mr. Simon Mainwaring. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, sir.